within our practice, which is obviously just a little acupuncture-like presentation, and our subjective presentation of Caracas and the condition of Latin America, obviously. For our personal practice, we have learned a lot of lessons for ourselves looking at those settlements. We're participating right now in Salzburg in Austria in a competition where we're developing a housing scheme on a mountain, where we take many of the ideas we have simply found there. And it works quite surprisingly. We had also Shui Endo for 6 months in Caracas, who developed a housing scheme for Singapore. Maybe some of you have seen it, which is a sort of a wall, floor and ceiling becomes a folded landscape, a spring texture, you could say, in his words, which is just coming out also of realities that you find there. So that can be translated, and I'm sure there are a lot of qualities that could be filtered out of that can be really efficient and interesting.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Carlos Fuentes, because I'm an avid reader of all Latin American literature. And he wrote a great book called El Espejo Enterrado, which is the mirror encrusted in the sand. But unfortunately, many of the Latin American great writers have a profound melancholy in them, and they always felt that they were Spaniards at heart. So, they probably are even that's why he retraces in El Espejo Enterrado the history of Latin America back to the Spaniards and the Conquista. So they really wished to be a part of Europe, let's say. Secretly, because that was their admiration, you know. And Vargas Llosa, another great writer from Peru, now has moved to Spain and leads a liberal economic organization. So it's curious that what's happened to them, and I think it's because they got caught in the trap. And this is a reality. They got caught in the trap of thinking in the 19th century. So this informal is a kind of ancient and modern village-like organization that harks back to some things we know, but the materials and the methods are modern. So we got to get out of the Hausmann thinking mode of opening up and cleaning out. So this other urbanism of which Hubert has precisely said will be the norm in the future. There's just not enough money in the global south. So, and the population is still growing. So we would like to introduce into this fabric, into this carpet, some new building types, that would have an open and adaptive system.
Interestingly enough, if you recall the Domino House of Corbusier, unknowingly, you know, what you see there is actually the realization of a subsequently super modern concept, and I'm sure 0. I don't know what promille of those people have ever heard about it. Right. So it almost seems there's a certain logic inside it, which you can't even stand in the way of it. You know, it has happened in so many places, and there is no contact. You know, nobody has talked to each other, but people follow certain logics. So there's something quite powerful, an organizational pattern, which is quite powerful, that we should take use of as architects.
The difference is from ancient Greece and let's say, the difference is from ancient Greece, let's say, and Italian hill towns, is the sheer scale of this. So that's important. That's what makes it different.
And the second question, I'll come to you in a minute, is perhaps more technical, or you say that you, in one way or another, evaluate your practice, which means probably that you do evaluate the processes which you created yourself. And you work with different stakeholders, inventing new typologies and kind of, you know, evaluating the success or failure of them. Is it more easier for you if you work with one stakeholder or two, or with many? Do you believe that if, you know, the bottom-up and top-down approach including stakeholders from a government, not only NGOs, not only informal, would be more successful, or is it more successful in Caracas when you target certain group and then a kind of develop the process where one stakeholder is kind of leading the process?
That's a good question. Let's say how we see ourselves, and this is like the result of learning by doing. That's just where we ended up being. We didn't really plan that. But the reality is bottom-up and top-down initiatives hardly ever meet. Everybody knows that, who has ever seen how a UN project, how a World Bank project, development project works, that never works out. So we have found that the space which exists where we can be most useful is right at the missing intersection or at the missing connection of that. So we neither on one end or the other end, we're right in the middle, and we're trying that those initiatives, which of course, if there are funds available, great. People who need them don't know where to find them. On the other hand, the funds only in rare examples really find the people. We had like Efim Schluger from the World Bank, an urbanist and architect who's evaluating projects throughout Latin America. He told us, if you look at the numbers of the investment which has been done in the last decade, and you look at the actual results, what has been done, you could have financed with about 10%. The rest just disappeared for trips, structures, secretaries, etc., etc. So there's a real need to reevaluate those structures, and we're doing this critically on our own. And as a small operation, we may be having a similar advantage that you have here in Berlage. We talked today at lunch. You can react quicker.
The truth is that you need people with vision, okay? People who push things through. And that's really what I encourage you architects to do, to really go out there, because I don't think there's anyone else who has a conception of the city or has been taught for many, many years to think about the city in the same way. So if you can hark on a local stakeholder or a government official who has a certain vision, you've really got to potentialize it.
Where are you?
When you're talking about the fact that they have needs and that you have to propose, let's say, solutions for an emergency situation, what about what they produce? Because we also have this kind of situations in my country, which is Dominican Republic, and we have a huge problem, which is that these areas of the cities consume basically everything for free, and you have sort of the middle class paying for their energy, for their water, for everything, and it's a very critical situation. And I wonder what these areas in the city produce that can be sort of an exchange, because it's always what their problems and solving their problems, and it's like what you showed. And I wonder, what can we get from them in a way to balance it out, because it's like it's sucking out the economy. And they also, because we have the situation that these people probably might work in the city but they go back, and it seems like a very inward situation where they create their own ecology, their own living, and what goes out of there, I wonder.
So let's try and rephrase it. You say, what kind of interchange can there be? What kind of interchange can there be between sectors, let's say?
Like, not only see it as what can we do for them,
but ask what your country can do for you. No, but we were thinking of that same line. But yes, and let's go back to it. We have to create, And we have to push as architects to create mechanisms like incentivizing maybe a tax, it may be paying for people to use, let's say, solar energy. Or, as you might know from Dominican Republic, probably the same as Venezuela, the electrical company charges let's say, the great majority middle class 30% more for the electricity that's stolen. So let's see how we can invent and investigate